Hello and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. Oh my god, I have been threatening this for a long time over on Instagram and it is finally happening. I've just got over myself and I'm just going to go for it. So just a little note, I'm recording this at home because at the studio at the moment there is so much building work going on that you wouldn't be able to hear me over the noise. And next door is also having some building work done. So if you hear any noise, that's what that is. If you hear a little tinkling or if I get distracted, that is my beautiful dog Luna, who's I think just woken up from a nap. So that's what that is. Yeah, so let's get on with it. I don't know why I'm dawdling. So today I'm going to look at Dandyism, and the reason that's what I'm starting with is one, there's an amazing exhibition on at Manchester Art Gallery that looks at dandyism and British men's fashion for the last like 250 years, and I really enjoyed it. So I wanted to talk a bit about that, and also looking at the fashion world and, you know, a lot of documentaries and like my world of fashion as well focuses very much on women's wear, and menswear kind of just gets passed over a lot. But we're going to talk about why that might be. And also just another little note, when I'm talking about menswear or women's wear, in terms of like fashion and dress, that is very much a historical term. And as was pointed out beautifully at the recent Trans Vegas event at Manchester Art Gallery, the terms menswear and women's wear come from a production point of view. That's a production term, sort of used by designers, manufacturers, retailers. They put that label on clothes, but then it's completely up to us as consumers whose body they go on. We make the clothes, and we don't have to use those terms. In this context, I am going to use those terms because when you read through textbooks and documentaries and all that kind of thing, that is how it's referred to. So it is historical, but just know that in a modern sense, I hope that soon enough those terms won't be used anymore. How wonderful would that be if they were just known as clothes? So let's get stuck in. I'm going to go back a little bit before the era of the dandy. So we're going back to the 1700s, when foppishness and fop style was all the rage. Now, what is that? Because when you're thinking dandy, you're probably thinking of a fop. So the fashion at this time, like early 1700s, was influenced by Italian style, and was considered later on to be quite effeminate. And from a modern gaze, we would probably think the same because we've been conditioned to do so. Men wore big, elaborate, white powdered wigs. They wore like powder on their face to make them look pale and beautiful. They wore like knee-length breeches and stockings, like up to the knee, usually white. They imagine basically someone in like over the knee socks, and then with like short trousers over them, basically. Men were even known to wear like specialist padding on their calves to make their legs look more shapely. So that's how obsessed with image men were at this point in time. They wore heeled shoes because that wasn't considered like feminine at that point. Like, men wore heels. That was, well, royalty and, you know, members of the upper class wore heels. Let's make that clear. These outfits would have been like embroidered, decorated, like they would have had the fanciest buttons ever. They would have been brightly coloured, made of, you know, velvet and silk and all these sumptuous fabrics. They would have had lace cuffs sort of showing underneath, like really big, long, fancy cuffs. And all this made it very clear to anyone looking at them that they were part of the upper class. And why did this signal? Why did that give that message? Well, think, if you were part of the working class, would you have been able to wear that? Would you have been able to do a physical job, like any kind of physical job really, wearing those kind of clothes? No. So the upper class, wearing these items of clothing and wearing these elaborate outfits, was signalling to everyone, I don't have to work. I am so rich, I don't have to work. Work is for you. And that is very much how it had been for a very long time. You know, clothes, and still do to a degree, clothes send a message about the person wearing them. We're going to move on. Can you hear people beeping their horns? That's really nice, isn't it? Great timing, guys. So we're going to move on to the late 1700s, when a man called Beau Brummell enters the scene. And he is the top dandy. He is the original dandy. And according to, there's a wonderful article by Alexandra Rowland. I really enjoyed the article. They really rip into Beau Brummell, and with good reason. So I recommend you go and search that and read it. It's really good. Anyway, so Beau Brummell was from a middle-class family who had very lofty goals. Bearing in mind that he was middle class, he was educated at Eton, went to Oxford, you know, he's that guy. And then he was in the army, where he just happened to befriend the Prince Regent of the time, who went on to become King George the Fourth. So the Prince Regent was still dressing the way everyone had at that point. And Beau Brummell comes along and flips everything on its head and introduces this new style: no wigs, no face paint, no powder, just natural hair, natural face. He wore trousers, not short breeches, with boots. Bear in mind, these trousers were tight. They were so tight. In a book that I'm really enjoying at the moment, Adorned in Dreams, they are referred to as erotic. They are that tight. So this is giving you a great picture. They would wear waistcoat with a shirt underneath and a very fitted tailcoat. This entire look was very much inspired by riding wear and, like, you know, horse riding dress. Again, very elite sport. And so the tailcoat was short at the front and went long at the back, because obviously you needed to be able to sort of move your legs around if you were riding a horse. So that's where this comes from. And they'd also wear cravat, which is a long strip of fabric that is sort of wrapped around the neck. So your shirt collar would be like up, like starched up, and then your cravat would show underneath that, but it had to be tied in a very particular way. Now, dandy style and the dandy revolution was known as the Great Masculine Renunciation. So it's where men en masse suddenly renounced anything that sort of made them beautiful, and that was effeminate. So they wanted to be manly men. That's what they wanted, and these clothes gave them that feeling. Or at least that's what Beau Brummell persuaded everyone. And these outfits were just like, in comparison to what had gone before, they were so dull. Oh my god, like you went from all these amazing bright colours and beautiful fabrics to like grey and black and navy and brown, and that's pretty much where it stayed for like even until now. If you walk into a suit shop, you know, like what colours are you going to see for men's formal wear and suits? Anyway, it's getting ahead of ourselves. Oh, also, if you see me looking down and, you know, stuff like that, I've made notes because I don't want to miss anything. You know, it's all important. And it also makes me sound professional when I turn a page. So, again, have a think about... So this guy, like, dandyism is all about detail and attention to detail, but in such a way that you look a little bit dishevelled. So the modern equivalent might be sort of the no makeup look, or you know, someone going, what, this old thing? Oh, I just threw this all together. And actually, as Beau Brummell states, it took him 5 hours to get ready and he needed a valet to help. That was every single day. So yeah, you can just imagine it going like, oh no, I always look like this. I just threw it on, and actually 5 hours. So again, you know, this is still very much fashion for the elite and the upper class, and especially royalty, because, you know, the working class don't have 5 hours to get ready in the morning. They're not going to be able to keep this look pristine and precise all day when they're working. So it's, you know, it's for men who don't have to work. Now, in the article by Alexander Rowland, it's Rowland, isn't it? Yeah, okay, doubting myself. They they say that, you know, it's, you know, a happy ending, depending on how you look at it, or a sad ending, because it's still a person. But Beau Brummell, although he hung out with the elite and, you know, upper class and acted like a very rich person, he really wasn't. And he then pissed off his mate King George so much by calling him fat in public that he was cut off completely. And he ended up having to flee the country because he owed so much money to, amongst others, his tailors and just everyone else. And he died completely broke and died of syphilis. So it didn't all end well for Beau Brummell, but he did have a huge impact on menswear in the 18th century. And around this time, you know, other factors would have been the Industrial Revolution. Because remember, this is Britain. This is happening in, let's face it, in London. And Britain was the first country to have an industrial revolution. So everything's modernising, and, you know, the old ways didn't fit as well with this new way of life. So like I said, men wanted to be manly, and that's where this all happens. So dandyism had this massive impact, and to the point that basically men just started wearing exactly the same things as each other. They basically now had a uniform, and that hasn't really changed since. Menswear, formal menswear, has basically stayed the same. You know, it's a suit. It's a three-piece suit in pretty dull colours, but we'll get on to how that might be changing in a bit. Okay, so Page turning. Sounds good, doesn't it? I completely forgot as well. If you can, try and find the 2006 film starring James Purefoy, who, if Beau Brummell looked like that, I'd have followed him too. It's called Beau Brummell, This Charming Man, and I believe it's only available on YouTube, and the only full-length version is the one that says it has Spanish subtitles, but it's not dubbed, it's just the subtitles. Highly recommend it if you prefer, like, if films help you to sort of visualise what it might have been like. There's some great scenes in it which really highlight the change in styles. I really, really loved that. And also, this isn't a side note, it's just that I'm not as knowledgeable on this as the people I'm going to mention. You must also remember that there were black dandies in Britain at this time in the Georgian period. They were brought over, they were kidnapped and brought to England as slaves, but some people who were enslaved were owned by families who were so rich that they could show off and show that they could afford to have a slave who didn't have to work. So it was definitely like a showing off thing. They were still slaves, they couldn't leave. But these people were given the fashionable clothes of the day, so dandy style, really beautiful clothes that, other people in their situation would not have had access to. And they were educated. I'm not saying they weren't already clever, but they were educated according to British standards. But some of these people basically got to live the life of a dandy, and were well known, and they were almost celebrities in their own right when they were younger. And then as they got older, they couldn't be seen as like a toy or a novelty anymore because they were a grown man. It was generally men, and they were shipped off somewhere else. That is a very brief summary, but there is an amazing two-part interview with Monica Miller on the Dressed podcast. If you search Black Dandyism, like I said, there's a two-part interview of her talking about her research and her books, and talking about individual figures that she highlights. And it is absolutely fascinating. She goes into so much more depth. Like, I don't know, God, a fifth of what she knows. Do you know what I mean? And so I wouldn't do it justice to try and cover it as part of this. But I did want to mention it because it gives a more rounded view of what Britain might have been like at that time. And yes, there weren't many black men who were able to live this kind of life, but there were some, and they were known, and there's lots of information about them. So highly recommend that you listen to the podcast and then go and get her books as well, if you want to know more about that, because she really gives like a great perspective, and like her knowledge is incredible. Like, wow, yeah. So go and check that out. I just didn't want to move on without mentioning that. So menswear carried on in this way. Obviously it evolved, and dandyism became a bit of a joke, the same way fops had become a joke. A man so obsessed with his own appearance was not cool anymore. No matter how much he pretended he wasn't, like you're spending a lot of time on how you look, that wasn't appropriate anymore. So it began to be seen as like a negative thing. And by the late 1800s, you've got people like Oscar Wilde, who are still like now referred to as dandies, but that's not really technically what they were. But you know, their style kind of went back a little bit. But there's also images of Oscar Wilde wearing you know, like a smoking jacket that looks very modern to our eyes. Like the shape and the style is so much like formal menswear now, and that was, you know, in the 1800s. It's nuts. But you know, that again, Oscar Wilde was seen as someone that was foppish, a dandy, effeminate, for caring about how they looked. So yeah, it's weird to think of how like the terms have become interchangeable, whereas at the time they would have been very specific. And you know, menswear continues just being the same old boring stuff. And by the 1900s, it is basically a uniform. All men wear the same thing. There's no room for individuality or creativity. If you wore something else, that, you know, oh no, like if you've seen what he's wearing, that vibe. And then, you know, carries on, very boring. And staying in England, the 1960s saw a revolution. It's kind of bizarre that it's called that, because you get mods coming into fashion, 60s style. If you've never seen it, I recommend that you watch Quadrophenia. It gives a real, obviously it's not made at the time, but it gives a very good idea of what the fashions would have been like at that time. I mean, it does have Sting in it, who does have a very 80s haircut in my mind, but whatever. So, but the fashion and the, you know, the way they depict the mod obsession with suits and like spending all their money on clothes and like really exquisite suits that were Italian. So going back, there's that Italian influence again. So there's a British sociologist. I don't know how to pronounce their surname. I'm gonna go with Dick Hebdige. I don't know. I am so sorry. But anyway, so they are quoted in the Manchester Art Gallery exhibition as describing mods as modern day working class dandies, which I really love, because generally mods were working class and they worked all week and saved up all their money to buy beautiful Italian suits that were then tailored to them perfectly. And again, there was this, you know, sticking with the dandy theme, there was this huge attention to detail. They were like obsessed with the details. So it was like they could tailor it to their personal tastes. So like how many pockets they had, where the pockets were, what style the pockets were, you know, what tie they would have worn, how the collar was, you know, was it like a classic collar, was it a stand collar, you know, what fabric it was made in, all that. The attention to detail was still there. So it's a modern day dandy, even though what, like the 60s is like 60 years ago. I'm not the best at mental arithmetic. I'm going with that. No one's here to correct me. So, you know, so it was still the same ethos of the Georgian era dandy, of attention to detail, beautiful fitted suits, but all kind of looking the same. But it was the working class this time who were adopting this ethos, maybe in rebellion against, you know, their everyday life. This was a form of escape. you know, like I'm not putting words into anyone's mouths, but I envisioned that it would have felt like a release from just your boring 9 to 5 that you can't escape from. Like, you know, you're stuck in this social class, but at the weekends you can go out in your really dapper suit and dance and drink and pretend that you are a little bit further up the ladder than you are in your everyday life. So this whole scene erupted in like swinging 60s London around this whole style. There was, you know, and the nightlife and the club scene and the music, it's all, you know, it's all part of that same thing. So like, I remember watching Quadrophenia and just falling in love. I think I probably saw it when Blur were coming out, and like they had, oh my god, is it Phil Daniels? Is that his name? The main actor in Quadrophenia is like on the first Blur album that I bought. Anyway, so I got a bit obsessed with like mod style and more from like the women's fashion angle, but still just the whole scene incredible. Anyway, let's move on. I'm going to move on from England because dandyism and dandy style and menswear clearly isn't just in England. It developed all over the world in different ways. And one place in particular that I want to focus on, just to kind of wrap up a little bit, is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Were you expecting that? Maybe not. There is a group, they are still going, it's, well, I say group, it's like a culture, a lifestyle, but a group of people known as sappeurs. So if you want to search for that, it is SAPEURS or Le Sap, which is SAPE, which stands for something that I'm not going to attempt the French accent of. I'm just not going to embarrass myself that way. You can search for it. It's incredible. This is a style that really is known to have begun in the 1920s. And so the Congo and like, and you know, Africa, just, oh my God, so many places, were colonized. And the Democratic Republic of Congo took the colonial style of their masters, like French and Belgian colonizers. So they took their style, you know, which, you know, God knows when that was from, and made it their own, basically. They took it and made it theirs, and it is still a culture that is going on today. Like, this is such a brief roundup, but again, it's because throughout like my art history course, university, all the sort of art and design and fashion courses I've ever done, it has been very Western focused, very Eurocentric, very white focused. You know, I'd never heard of this, and yet it's this massive movement. It is so cool, and you know, we just didn't hear about it. It wasn't mentioned. You know, it's so I didn't grow up, or I didn't. Throughout my education, we were taught a lot about Western fashion, white fashion, and, you know, Eurocentric fashion, which means I don't know as much about these things as I would like to. You know, I'm still learning, but I'm really aware that there are other people out there who know far more, who I am learning from, and who you should go and learn from, because there are articles out there, there are books, there are photos, there are documentaries. Like, just go and hunt it out, which is what I'm doing, inspired by podcasts that I've listened to, you know, just talks that I've been to. You know, you can never stop learning, and you can never stop improving and expanding your knowledge on even something that people think is frivolous, like fashion. So anyway, let me just bring us back to the sapeurs. So this this fashion is, if you look for photos, they are men who, well, people who were living in extreme poverty thanks to war, colonialism, you know, and places that just haven't recovered. And they use fashion as a way to, oh, I got it written down. Like, in the way they see it, fashion, clothes aren't just, you know, it's not just fashion, it's like, it's a way of life for them. It feeds the soul. And I think I saw somewhere that they believe it pays respect to God through their like joy and their care and attention to detail in their appearance. You know, it means that much to them, to the point that even sort of, you know, people who are so poor and really struggle, they will save everything they've got to be able to buy like a branded piece of clothing, like Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, you know, branded clothing. They may have connections in France, and they will buy specific pieces of clothing and have it, you know, get it back to them in Congo from Paris, because it means that much to them, this look and the way they present themselves. The outfits that they wear are like really bright, really colourful, impeccable. Like, the styling is just, oh my god, like, yeah, just stunning. Absolutely love it. And I think, I'm sure I saw that there is a rule that you're not allowed more than 3 colours in one outfit. So a lot of them are very tonal, which again looks brilliant. Like, oh my god, and they just look like dapper doesn't even get close to covering it. But you know, they're still living in areas of extreme poverty, so like the juxtaposition of that is really intense. So I highly recommend that you go and look that up and read some more about it. I'm not really sure how YouTube works yet, so if I can put links in the comments or whatever, or the caption, then I will do. If not, I will find a way. That's what I'm saying. I'll try and find some good links for you so you can learn more. So this kind of brings us up to today. Like, sapeurs, it's still going strong. They still have that ethos of looking good, and you know, showing their self-respect by, you know, wearing these clothes. But then, like, when you look at again, like going back to sort of Eurocentric fashion and the Western world, formal menswear like just hasn't really changed, has it? And this is what Alexandra Rowland says, that basically Beau Brummell just killed men's fashion for like 200 years or whatever. He just trapped men in this uniform that they can't escape from, which is a really sad way of looking at things. However, it's really really pleasing to see and exciting to see that in recent years, again, it comes from like the top down, which is how fashion tends to work. But when you look on the red carpet, so like at the Oscars or whatever, and celebrities, they are starting to push back. or maybe their stylists are starting to push back, but they are wearing more colourful, more decorated clothing on the red carpet and events and stuff. Just think Billy Porter wearing that fabulous gown in 2019 or 18 at the Oscars. Oh my God, incredible. Why not? Why not? Why do men have to wear a really boring tuxedo? Yes, you know, obviously you can look really, really good in a tuxedo, but, you know, you could equally look amazing in a pink suit, or, you know, a really embroidered cape. Like, I don't know, wear what you want. But I love that top down it is starting to sort of filter through again, that menswear is becoming more exciting, more colourful, more decorated and just freer. Thank God. You know, you've also got people like Dandy Wellington. Again, I think there's a podcast episode of Dressed where they interview Dandy Wellington. I'm sure. I'll have to look that one up, but I'm sure that's on there. But if you go and have a look for Dandy Wellington, especially on Instagram, who lives by the ethos of vintage style, not vintage values, like, be still my beating heart. Oh my God. And Dandy Wellington, just the look, it is very vintage, but it is, again, it's impeccable. Like the tailoring, the colour combinations, the styling, the just, you know, how it is worn, just, oh my God, stunning, absolutely stunning. So, you know, it's coming back, not necessarily saying that cravats are going to be back in, although that would be pretty cool, I'd be well into that. But yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that like breeches and riding boots and tailcoats are going to come back in, but you never know. You never know. So it's just really fun to see like how menswear, you know, what, 300 years ago, was exciting and bright and colourful and extravagant, and that, so it kind of like whoop, 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 whoop. Let's go really boring, let's all wear the same, let's all wear the same. Oh, maybe let's creep back up towards something more exciting and individual and interesting. Oh, so how good is that? So I'm gonna leave you with a final thought, which is something I've been pondering since the exhibition, since the Trans Vegas talk, which is, if Beau Brummell hadn't had his way and hadn't had that influence over, you know, sort of royalty and the elite and the upper class, what would fashion look like today? And I don't just mean, like, you can say, what would menswear look like today? Would it have ended up where it is now? Or how it ended up anyway? Or would it have continued evolving into something even more wild and exciting? But also then think about, it's not just menswear that then would have been affected if Beau Brummell hadn't been around. Women's wear was, you know, reflected and rejected what menswear was doing, and copied and changed and, you know, rebelled against what menswear was doing. And now it's a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit less gendered. It's still there, but I think we're getting to a point where it hopefully it's going to be a genderless fashion industry. That would be amazing. But anyway, if Beau Brummell hadn't done his thing, what would fashion look like? What would it have looked like? How would it have evolved? How would it have developed? What would we be wearing today? What would the elites have been wearing of history? Would the working class have adopted those same things? How would the Industrial Revolution have looked? Or would that have made fashion change anyway? Just let me know what you think. Just have a little ponder, and just let me know what you think about that. Alright. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be honest, I've had to like stop recording because I've just like, my mouth ran away with itself and I was like, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. So there is some editing in this. But I hope you enjoyed it, and you can see how long I've been talking because the light has changed so much and my face looks really bright now and it looks really dark outside. Right, I'm gonna go, and it is nearly time to walk Luna Dog, so I'm gonna go and get ready for that. Yes, Luna Dog, that's what I call her. Right, I'm rambling. Bye.